Text, Chaffey College, Wignall Museum of Contemporary Art, Home Edition. Artist Talk, Amy Sarkisian, May 5, 2021 from 12:30 to 1:30 p.m., PDT. A split screen shows 4 people, 2 men on the left and 2 women on the right.
Welcome. Thank you for joining us at today's program featuring artist Amy Sarkeesian, presented as part of the Wignall Museum's Home Edition. Home Edition is a series of curated artist talks, workshops, and discussions featuring artists and cultural workers.
Rebecca's section fills the screen.
My name is Rebecca Trawick, and I serve as the director and curator of the Wignall Museum. The Wignall Museum is a teaching museum and interdisciplinary art space that introduces Chaffey College students, faculty, staff, and community members to innovative contemporary art objects and ideas. By fostering critical thinking, visual literacy, discourse, and empathy, the museum seeks to enhance the intellectual and cultural life of our community.
Text, to learn more about native land acknowledgement, please visit https://usdsc.us/nativeland, https://native-land.ca.
I want to take a moment to recognize that we are situated on the Rancho Cucamonga campus of Chaffey College, which resides on the traditional and unceded lands of the Tongva people. We offer our recognition and respect to the elders, both past, present, and future.
Roman's section fills the screen.
And hello, my name is Roman Stollenwerk. I'm assistant curator at the Wignall Museum. Visit us at www.chaffey.edu/Wignall to access our full schedule of programs and available recordings. When possible, recordings are made available on our website. Announcements post to our email subscribers and social media when new videos are available. All recordings on our site include captions and audio descriptions as options.
Text, review announcements about our programs. Subscribe to our email list, www.chaffey.edu/wignall/about-us.php.
You can follow us on social media, including Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube at Wignall Museum.
Text, we ask that you complete a quick online survey that will help us as we evaluate our online programming and plan our future programs.
Visit our website About Us page if you'd like to sign up to receive our email announcements. We also ask that you complete a brief survey after the session at www.tinyurl.com/Wignall Spring21 Visitor Survey. Thank you.
Andrew's section fills the screen. Next, text, this program is a 48-minute presentation followed by questions and discussion.
And hello everyone, my name is Andy Hadel. I'm the preparator at the museum. In a moment, Amy Sarkisian will present. Any time remaining after the presentation will be available for Q&A.
Rebecca Trawick.
Thanks, Roman and Andy.
A split screen shows all 4 speakers.
So today I'm pleased to introduce our guest artist, Amy Sarkeesian. Amy Sarkeesian grew up in a working class Cleveland suburb where she absorbed art through comics, Saturday morning cartoons, and Mad magazine. She received a BFA from Kent University, followed by an MFA from UCLA in the late 90s. After graduate school, she ran the project space Studio 870 for emerging and underrepresented artists. Sarkeesian collaborated with author Janet Sarbanes on a children's book titled People of the Pancake, published in 2015. Sarkeesian and her life partner, Tyler Blahovich, currently run an outdoor project space in Northeast Los Angeles called The Yard. Amy has exhibited internationally at galleries in Paris, Milan, and London. She's been included in various group shows in London, New York, Chicago, and Los Angeles, and museum shows that include the Art, Design, and Architecture Museum at UC Santa Barbara, Torrance Art Museum, the Chicago Cultural Center, and the Max Center, Los Angeles. At the WIG, we're proud to call Amy a colleague. She currently teaches at Chaffey College, and in 2014, Amy participated in the group exhibition, Unruly, curated by our assistant curator, Roman Stollenwerk.
Text, Amy Sarkeesian, selected works from 1999 to 2021.
Amy currently lives and works in Los Angeles, so please join me in giving Amy a warm virtual welcome.
So these are selected works from just about after I got out of grad school till present.
Amy's section fills the screen. Next, art, a platter with a chunk of baked ham with cloves, 3 pineapple rings with cherries in the center, and green garnish.
So this doesn't include everything. Often, if I'm working on something larger, I'll be trying to do quicker things like collage or drawings in between just to kind of keep my sanity. So once I went through and kind of organized this lecture, I realized I was going to have to leave a lot out. This is the first solo exhibition I did after I got out of graduate school, and it's just called The Perfect Ham. And I like the pun about like kind of presenting yourself or your work, being kind of hammy, but also this was about me trying to perfect the process of something. And I just decided to perfect ham baking. So I practiced for several months before the show opened, buy a ham, bake it, try to make it perfect. And this was probably maybe the 7th ham that I did. And I decided, okay, I'm pretty good at this. So the evening of the exhibition opening, the few hours before that, I baked the ham, dressed it, tried to kind of set it up in the way that you see like, you know, perfect holiday food presented. And then I presented it in the gallery space, put some heat lamps on it. And then when it started to become less and less perfect, the show was over. So it was just a couple of hours of just experiencing the ham, being in the room with it. And, you know, you could smell it. The room smelled like ham. No one ate it. It was just about witnessing this thing.
Art, a rectangular sign with a waterfall, Cool Cigarettes logo in the center, and a Surgeon's General warning. Graffiti is drawn over it all. Monsters' heads are in a line at the bottom. Text, Cool sign with monsters, 1999.
And then at the time I was living in my studio and I was unemployed. I'd just gotten out of school. So my materials at the time were things that I would just kind of find. And I was living in a studio in Virgil Village in Los Angeles. And right next door, I shared a wall with a small market. So I got a lot of stuff from them that they were discarding. And I found this Cool Cigarette sign laying on the ground. So I pulled it in. The other free thing that I used quite a bit back then is before the internet was really kind of ubiquitous. I would still get mail and I would still get these catalogs. So I'd get catalogs from like Halloween stores, J. Crew, like whatever catalog you could get, I was somehow getting all this junk mail. So, which was great because I had a lot of fodder to do collage with. So these are just, this is called Cool Sign with Monsters. It's just a bunch of little masks on the bottom of this sign.
Art, a piece of paper with handwritten lyrics is surrounded by smiling cutout heads. Text, Fear Collage, I Love Living in the City, 1999.
And this piece was done, a friend of mine who I went to Kent State with, sort of, he lived in Kent and he was also an artist. He went to New York when I went to LA. So he came to visit, and when we got together, we would always play music. And he wanted to cover a Fear song called I Love Living in the City, but I wasn't that familiar with the song. So he wrote down the lyrics for me to sing it while he played guitar. And I found the lyric sheet a couple of weeks later, just kind of in the corner covered with dirt. And I was like, now this is really like a good lyric sheet. And I liked his handwriting and it was like a nice memory. So I made a collage with the lyric sheet, and it's just kind of flanked in a nice kind of sunny smiles from all of these J. Crew models. So that's called I Love Living in the City.
Art, a stone chamber with 5 mannequins in black robes with wigs and oddly shaped and painted heads wearing wigs. Each one has a skull at its feet. Text, Door Skull Reconstructions, dark version, 2000.
And then when I was in grad school, I had this notion that, you know, if you could see my pointer, this little skull right here is one of those Halloween treat skulls that are like vacuum formed. Sometimes they're jack-o'-lanterns, sometimes they're these cartoony skull heads that kids carry around, they put candy in. And I thought, well, that skull is, if you think about it, like it's really pretty disgusting that these kids are carrying around a decapitated head and putting candy in it, even though we don't think of it that way because it's been like cutified. So I thought, well, what if that was reconstructed? Like, whose head would they really be carrying around? So I decided to use this, forensic anthropological technique where you build up muscles on a skull, you add the eyeballs, and then you can kind of figure out what that person used to look like. So I did that with this cartoony skull, and then I started collecting these Halloween and cartoonier skulls. Some are more realistic, and I just wanted to see who all of these people would be. So I reconstructed these 5 skulls, and the people on top were what the images that I had cast from them. And then I was looking at a lot of glam rock photography by Mick Rock. He did a lot of photography of like Bowie and Queen. And I started thinking of these 5 people as like maybe a band. So I would dress them up in different clothes and take photographs. And this was kind of the final presentation of this band. And they're kind of heavy metal. This is kind of based on the White Queen, Black Queen album that Mick Rock took the photos for. But this is just Toy Skull Reconstructions, the dark version. I had a lot of fun, like just kind of coming up with each character.
Art, a skull covered in small white beads with large beads for the mouth and black beads decorating around the black eye sockets and forehead. Text, Skull, 2002.
And then because I was thinking a lot about skulls and symbolically what they mean in our culture, and then how the skull in other cultures and how other cultures deal with mortality and loss, I started reading about ossuaries and other kinds of other cultures that will use the bones of their beloved and decorate them to kind of celebrate their life. And in our culture, we use the skull as just like, it's on bottles of poison. It's a symbol of death and no rebirth. And it's this kind of feared symbol. So I decided to kind of take a cue from all of these other cultures and decorate these skulls and try to make this symbol into something beautiful, trying to kind of neutralize the darker aspect of this symbol with something that's more seductive. And then I realized I do that quite a bit in my work, or I used to at least try to find this neutralizing middle ground. Like I take something that's somewhat grotesque and add something silly, or something dark and add something beautiful, just to kind of play with that juxtaposition, what that does. So I did a series of these skulls. So this is the first one I did.
Art, a skull covered with round and long oval wooden beads in various shades of brown.
This is with some wood beads. And these are all just skull sized.
Art, a skull with black and white striped material on its surface, blue curved jewelry beads for the mouth, and round beads lining its eyes, nose, mouth, and decorating its forehead. Art, a skull covered with small gold beads with black beads surrounding its eye sockets, chin, and back. Large opaque gold beads form the mouth.
And then my grandmother passed away, and my mom gave me all of her costume jewelry. So I started adding her costume jewelry into the skulls that I would make. So I would, kind of make a basic pattern and then fill in the rest of it with another kind of pattern with beads that I would get like from the bead district downtown or wherever I could find them. And then they became even more personal to me because these were something that came from my grandmother.
Art, a skull covered in round white and ivory beads of various sizes, with 2 blue beads above the eye sockets.
So a lot of these have her jewelry in them, the later ones.
Art, a skull covered with black beads, with a floral-shaped decoration on its forehead in diamond-like beads. Large clear beads form the mouth.
This is her brooch right here, and I just kind of built off of it, everything else.
Art, a sketch on a yellowed piece of paper of a skeleton lying down with feet splayed, leaning on a low wall. Text, James Ensor, 1860 to 1949, My Portrait in 1960, 1888, etching, 3 by 5 inches, plate.
And then I was looking a lot at this artist named James Ensor, and I thought, well, he has just such a funny way of dealing with dark subject matter, mortality. Like he'll kind of make something grotesque, silly at the same time. And this etching that he did is My Portrait in 1960, which I thought was really kind of brave of him to even just go there mentally and figure out, like, where am I going to be in 1960? Well, he was born in 1860, so most likely I'll be dead. And then he did this silly little etching of himself, and the feet are just so funny. So it really kind of resonated with me.
Art, a doll held on a stand. Her face, body, and limbs are shrunken and withered. She wears a cloth diaper and pink slippers. Her hair is wild and cotton. Text, My Portrait in 2080, 2003, 18 by 6 by 6 inches.
So I did my portrait in 2060, where I'm not going to be dead, hopefully, but I'm going to be really old. So this was kind of like the Ensor piece was kind of the impetus for me to make this little homage to his piece, this little sculpture that's about doll size. But I was also kind of, when I was working as a art handler, a friend of mine named Matt, we were having lunch and he had an apple and he carved a face into it, and then he set it outside. At the end of the day, because it was a really hot day, the apple just kind of shrunk and dehydrated. And then I remember doing this project in Cub Scouts, even though I'm female. My mom was a den mother for my older brother, and I was too young to be on my own. So I went to Cub Scout meetings and did all of the crafts, and we would do this apple head craft, and I remembered it really fondly. And researched apple head dolls, and this other phenomenon came up called kitchen witches, which are apple head dolls that you make, and you make it into a witch and you put them into your kitchen, and they're supposed to be good luck. So this piece is kind of a combination of a self-portrait based on the Ensor piece and that kind of humor, and then this idea of a kitchen witch, and then just this nostalgic idea of, revisiting an old craft, which I do quite often in my work. Oops. Get rid of that.
Art, a male doll with a mustache, red plaid shirt, and khakis sits on a bench surrounded by empty beer cans. He leans forward, elbows on thighs, and holds a head that looks like him in his hands. In front of him is a large, colorful box on a TV stand. Text, Brawny Guys, 2005.
This piece, so again, I'm still living in my studio, still getting stuff from the market next door. They discarded a paper towel box where they would get like masses of paper towels, and it was a brawny paper towel box. I'm going to flip to the next slide because you can see it a little bit better right here.
3 photos. One shows the man's pale face more clearly, with the head in his hands a more lively color and wavier hair. Another shows the side of the box the man is looking at. It has a painting of him in a field. The third photo is from a more rear angle of the man and box.
And the box had the Brawny logo on it. It had just the Brawny guy's head and shoulders and a couple of trees behind him, which is all you ever see of the Brawny guy. And then I thought, what's the rest of him look like? Maybe he's super dopey from here down. So I kind of made this dopey, kind of paunchy version of him, and I filled in the rest of him with what I would kind of imagine what the rest of that view is that we never get to see. And then I thought it was like a TV set. Then I decided to make a really paunchy, dopey, bad, abstract version of the Brawny guy, holding a realistic version of his own head. So it's kind of like this self-reflective thing where he's watching himself on TV and he's holding his own head, and maybe the head's looking at him. And it's just this triangulation of the Brawny guys.
Art, a doll sits cross-legged on the floor. She hunches over a hand mirror. Her left fist is on the floor. Her head leans on her right hand. She wears a black t-shirt, shorts, and striped socks. Text, Good Kitty Gone Bad, 2005.
This was in the same show. This was a show I had at Sister. Brawny Guys, this piece called Good Kitty Gone Bad.
Next, a photo taken from over the doll's shoulder shows a grotesque mask reflected in the mirror.
Good Kitty Gone Bad was just the t-shirt I found at the thrift store that I put on this little figure. But from across the room, you can kind of see it in this photo. From across the room, you just see the little girl looking in the mirror, kind of contemplating herself. But then if you kind of go over her shoulder and look down at what she's seeing in the mirror, you realize she's got this horrific old grotesque mask on. Or it's not her mask, it's her head. So it kind of gives you like maybe a little jump scare or something when you look over to it. And I like to think about Caro and how you have to move around his sculpture, and you kind of have to do that with this piece just to get the entirety of it.
Art, large, jagged red words on a wall, surrounded by two heads draped in red cloths. Everything appears to drip. Text, Bloody Amy Sarkeesian, 2005.
So this was another show, different show called Deep Red that I did in Paris. So this font, this bloody font, this actually says my name. This is called Bloody Amy Sarkeesian. When I was younger and a lot of us were into metal, my friends would have bands, and then they would make these fonts and like logos for their band, but they were so bloody and over the top that you couldn't actually read what the band name was anymore. It just became this abstract drippiness. So I did that with my name, and I covered the Amy Sarkeesian with red sequins, which kind of harkens back to this glam rock kind of aesthetic. But at the same time, since it's blood dripping down the wall, as you move, the sequence will capture light differently. So it gives this sense of movement, even though it's a completely static object. So I liked that, again, that combination of something kind of seductive and beautiful and being like almost cryptic and not being able to tell what you're looking at. And then it's flanked with these two, cloaked, scary, bloody heads.
Art, a long red splash that drips down a wall. Red pools on the floor below. Text, Profondo Rosso, Tenebra, 2005.
Then same show. This is called Profondo Rosso, which is deep red in Italian, which is the name of a Dario Argento film. I was watching a lot of Dario Argento films at this time. There's a movie called Tenebrae, don't know how to say it, but I think it means darkness if I'm not wrong. There's a scene in that film where one of the actors gets her arm or hand cut off, and then slow motion, she just turns across this white wall and the blood is just splattering all over this white wall. And again, it's just like the most gorgeous thing you've ever seen and the most horrific, which Argento's the master of doing this combination of beautiful and violent, horrific imagery. So I took that blood splatter and traced it and then recreated it and covered it with sequins. So this piece is about 12 feet long. It's not small. So it would be kind of what the size of what it would be if that actually was traced from the film. And then at the bottom, these blood pooling up where the wall might meet the floor, which feels like another horror movie trope. And then this is a view of the entire show where I've got the Amityville horror bleeding wall on the other side.
A photo of the art gallery with the long splash on the left, the bloody font at the end, and red drips down the wall from the ceiling on the right. Next, art, a dark red head hangs on a wall. It has long, dark red strips hanging down. One eye socket is empty. One has a yellow-green eyeball. Text, Don't worry, it's almost over, 2005.
And then behind on this little wall, there's one more piece. This is called Don't Worry, It's Almost Over. This piece was one of those kind of distraction pieces that I was doing in my studio while I was gluing little tiny pieces of sequins all over these giant cutout wood pieces, which again, I like getting into that meditative space. I like having that kind of process where it slows you down and you get into a certain headspace, but at the same time, it's nice to do something like this that was just so fun, and I didn't think about it at all. And then I found this super ball and just shoved it in the eye socket, and I thought, well, that's the perfect metaphor for someone winking at you, right? And it's also kind of giving this lightheartedness to the whole bloody, violent show. So I really like this because there's a freshness to it, and I didn't expect it. It wasn't something that I plotted out and, intellectualized. And so I really love that piece. Sometimes you do things like that, it doesn't work at all, it goes in the garbage. That's fine too. But this one was pretty fun for me.
Art, a cloth upside down head with hair splayed on the floor. Its neck is a bloody stump. Text, Rose, 2005.
This was a piece. I was still getting a lot of my materials from thrift stores, so I would get old clothes, cut them up, use the fabric, see what I could make. And this is called Rose. So I made a rose out of some red felt, some sort of, or maybe it was, velvet. And I had this head laying around, this kind of wig head, and I decided, well, it kind of is the size and shape of like a cutoff neck. So I just kind of combined the two. So this piece actually sits on the floor. So it's kind of like, some sort of foliage growing out of the ground, but then you come around to the other side and it's this decapitated head. Again, watching too much Argento, it found its way into my work, but there's also a kind of a Muppet-like quality to this that I like, so.
Art, a small end table shaped like a hollow letter U on its side, covered in geometric shapes and shades of brown and tan. Text, end table sculpture, vinyl contact paper on IKEA furniture, 2006.
And then I did another show in Paris, and this is a lot less bloody. So I was getting a lot of furniture. I moved in with my now husband, and we went to IKEA a lot, and I just hated this end table so much because it just screamed IKEA to me. So I bought it because I hated it, and then I decided that I'm going to do this antique marquetry technique on it. I was looking at a lot of wood inlay, and but since it was a shitty IKEA end table, you couldn't do real wood veneer. So I did contact paper wood veneer inlay on it, but I didn't try to make it look shitty. I wanted it to be beautiful within this realm of IKEA. Like, this makes sense to me.
Art, a small table covered with the same paper but in a different pattern. Text, table sculpture, vinyl contact paper on IKEA furniture, 2006.
So I did several IKEA furniture pieces, right, inlaid with contact paper. I like this table because it's kind of harkening back to minimalist cube in a way.
A photo of the top of the table, showing intricate designs.
Here's a close-up of the top. So I looked at a lot of like quilt patterns and marquetry patterns, and I really tried to make something beautiful, not to make fun of IKEA furniture or, I have tons of IKEA furniture. I can't make fun of people who own it because I'm that.
Art, a maroon and navy latch hook rug in a Persian rug pattern, with flowers around the edges and a floral shape in the center, with fringes along two edges. Text, rug sculpture, 2006.
And then in the same show, this is another example of me kind of looking back and getting a nostalgic kind of craft and bringing it back into my practice, which when I was younger, I did a lot of latch hook rugs. It was very big in the early 80s, 70s to make latch hook. I'm also Armenian, so my house was full of Persian rugs. My dad loves Persian rugs, so they were everywhere. So I just grew up with them being just a very normal thing in our house. So I decided to recreate a real Persian rug, but using latch hook. So if you look at the back of a really nice Persian rug, you'll see that like maybe within a square inch, there's 25 to 50, maybe more little pieces of wool in there, kind of creating the design. But when you have a latch hook, you get a choice of 4. It's just such a big mesh, and I'm using yarn. So it actually doesn't translate super well in this photo, but when you, because it kind of tightens it up in the photograph, but when you see the rug in real life, it's blurry. And a friend of mine said, I feel like when I look at this, I'm drunk. Like you can't really focus on it quite well.
Next, a photograph of the end table, small table, and rug in an art gallery.
So again, it's kind of taking this high and adding it to this low, and then what happens here, neutralizing. It's just called rug sculpture. And this is a shot of all 3 pieces together.
A black and white poster with a large sketched face on the right, with a huge hooked nose and spiral eyes. Text, Amy Sarkeesian, So Is Your Face. December 15th to February 2nd, 2008. Opening reception, December 15th, 2007, 6 to 8 p.m. Sister, 437 Jinling Way, Los Angeles.
And I did a show at Sister in Los Angeles. This is the poster I did for it, where I had been doing a lot of just goofy, kind of doodly face drawings in a sketchbook, maybe 9 by 12, but it didn't feel like they were resolved enough to exhibit. And I didn't want to just frame these little drawings. I felt like because they were so kind of quick and silly, I needed to give them a little bit more grandeur, I guess.
Art, a line sketch of a thin woman's face with long hair in small sections, parted just off the middle. Shades of brown are in spots on edges of the canvas. She has thin features. Text, before, 2007, oil on canvas, 6 by 4 feet.
So I took these small drawings and I created oil paintings with them, but I didn't use color. I just used like a buff toned ground and used black oil paint. Oh my God, a rat just ran by. Oh, sorry. Black oil paint. And that's what these paintings are. So I feel like I've kind of taken the drawings and got them to a point where they were resolved enough for me to exhibit them, or they were resolved enough for me to say, okay, this is the artwork.
Art, a line sketch of a round, wide woman's face with long hair in big sections. She has huge round eyes, tiny pupils, wide nostrils, and a wide mouth with big teeth. Text, after, 2007, oil on canvas, 11 by 9 feet.
This is 6 by 4 feet, which is pretty big for a painting. And then this was before, this is after, which is 11 by 9 feet, which is the biggest painting I think I've ever done.
A photo of the after painting hanging on a wall in an art gallery, with 3 smaller paintings on an adjacent wall. They are all line sketches of distorted faces.
This is a shot of it in the space. And if you've never been to Sister Gallery, it doesn't exist anymore, but when it did, it wasn't like a huge cavernous gallery. It was a little more intimate. So with those 2 larger paintings and then these smaller paintings, which were flanking either wall, when you walked into the room, you really felt like someone was invading your personal space. Like the energy in there from the paintings caused people to leave the gallery. And lots of people are like, I just can't be in there with them. It's just too crowded. And there's no one in the room except for you and these kind of creepy paintings.
A photo of a different area of the same gallery, with the before painting on one wall and 2 smaller line sketches on another wall.
Here's another view. so I liked this idea of a painting physically making you move, which is what sculpture typically does, right? So that's kind of comes back a little bit later when I start doing more painting, and this idea of personal space too with images.
Art, a black and white drawing of a large mouth smiling with a big gap between the front teeth. On one tooth is text, Amy Sarkeesian, WPA, 2011. Text, American Gag Poster, WPA, Los Angeles.
Then I did a show. I lost both of those galleries. My LA gallery and my Paris gallery didn't fare too well during the recession. So it's kind of a free agent, and I joined an artist collective called WPA, and we had a space in Chinatown in Los Angeles.
Next, art, a sphere formed from round, flat pieces, with white briefs on the bottom. Text, Sphere, 2011, 36 inches.
We would all kind of pitch in, pay the rent for the space, and then either curate a show or we would show our work or do whatever we wanted for whatever month we got designated. So I did a show, and I was teaching sculpture, and I was reading Passages in Modern Sculpture, again, by Rosalind Krauss. And so I was thinking a lot about modernist sculpture. Also looking at, well, not looking at, kind of remembering gag gifts that were, and kind of prank stuff that you'd find like at the back of comic books when you were young. They don't really do this anymore. You can get like dog barf or, you know, a hand buzzer or something like that. So I started looking at those objects again and based the show on that idea. This is called American Gag. So this is just the world's largest underwear. And then I made this kind of perfect, nice linear based sphere to fit the underwear. This is 3 feet by 3 feet. And again, it's kind of taking the, you know, the highness and the haughtiness of modern art and just making it human, giving it this figurative element and making it more human, knocking it down.
Art, a large statue with thin, flat legs, a big nose in between at the top, and a big mohawk. The sculpture wears dingy high tops, sneakers and socks. Text, Double Mohawk, 2011, 7 feet tall.
This piece was in Unruly. Remember? Double Mohawk. So this piece is life-size, a little taller than the average person, 7 feet. So
Art, a triangular block with a flat circle on the top. The circle has a large, toothy smile. There are wing-tipped shoes at the base with mirrors on top of the toes. Text, Perv, 2011, 5 by 3 feet.
This was another piece called Perv. So this, very clearly you could see I'm thinking a lot about abstract sculpture, modernism, but again, adding this kind of silly element with the wingtip shoes and the mirrors on the feet, which are like this old kind of trope of like men trying to look up women's skirts.
Art, a large cutout of a toothy black and white smile. Text, Smile, 2011, 7 feet tall.
And then I did a lot of these, actually I don't have a slide of it. I did these smiles in the last show where I just sold these little smiles that were maybe around 12 inches big on pieces of wood. I'd paint all these different smiles and I sold each one for $100 at the show. And then I decided I was going to make a gigantic smile. So this is actually 3 pieces of plywood that have been connected together. So it's quite big. It's about 12 feet wide. So it towers over you a bit. And it's just leans against the wall. It's 3/4 inch ply that's been supported in the back. And this is a good example of how things in your life when you're making your work can kind of find their way into your work, because at this time I was dealing with getting braces, and so all of a sudden everything was about teeth and smiles.
Art, a large cutout of a smile similar to the previous one, but with 3 vertical lines separating the tooth area into 4 parts. The smile leans on a wall in a room.
This piece I'm including because I think it's important to note that I don't work in studios anymore. I can't afford the double rent. And I got really sick of living in a studio and having a hot plate. And so I just want normal comfort at a human American level. And then I will find places to make my work. So it's scary for a lot of gallerists who see this because they really want to take collectors into like a nice cavernous like studio to show them the work and say, oh, this is the artist and where they work. I like to work where I live, and I like to work in my house. So I just figure it out. And that's totally fine. You can make great work in your living room, in your kitchen, wherever you need to, you just do it.
Next, art. 2 large pieces of plywood lean against a wall, tilting toward each other at the top. A brown Ugg boot is at both far corners. Text, Uggs, 2013, 97 by 105 inches.
Yeah, I mean, this is a pretty big piece and it's in my living room and it's fine. So this is another piece that I did. Again, this kind of figurative and abstract that's happening at the same time. I just had some old Uggs. They were becoming very out of style. There's a hole in them. So I combined them with these 2 sheets of just, you know, store-bought machined 4x8 sheets of birch ply. Cut a little slit so that I could put the boots on the panels there and then just push them together. So for me, the rise that the Uggs are giving the corners creates a really nice void in between the 2 pieces. And then it's just about that simple gesture, right? But then it also becomes these kind of giant legs in a way because there's boots on the bottom. So
Art, a rectangular piece of wood with a square of wood over the bottom. 2 dark knots are near the edges and top of the rectangle. Text, Torso, 2013.
Another obvious kind of figurative piece. There's just a little wall piece painting called Torso.
Art, a tall black wood block with silver dots and a tall heel at the bottom. A tall wood pole painted in tiger stripes extends from the top. The boot sits on a large wooden block with 2 wooden stairs on each side. Text, Ziggurat, 2013, 8 by 4 by 4 feet.
And then I did a show at a friend's space called Weekend in Hollywood. And I was thinking a lot about, still again, sculpture, using a lot of wood, glam rock. So this is a heavy metal boot with 1 spandex covered leg coming out of it. And then I kind of think of the thing that it's standing on as a stage. And if you've ever gotten onto a stage, there's always these little wood 2-step risers. So I put those all the way around each 4 sides. So it creates this kind of worship pedestal, the ziggurat that the glam rock leg thing is on that you know, worship.
A rear view of the same sculpture.
There's a backside view. So it's very angular and very abstracted, but you know, there's little silver wooden spikes coming out of it. It was very fun to paint the tiger leg pattern.
Art, 3 figures along a wall, with long wigs and skin-colored, tall rectangles. Each figure has 2 long, strips-like legs covered in blue leopard print, brown, and white and red tiger print. The middle one has a longer skin-colored rectangle that is curved and split in the middle. Text, Chaps, 2013, 72 by 72 by 10 inches.
And then in the same show, there's I think it was David Lee Roth who wore assless chaps once, and I just thought that was so funny. So I made these band members, hair band members, the lead singer's in the middle, I guess, with the assless chaps, and the other 2 guys are wearing their spandex. And these are just planks again that lean against the wall that I painted. And I love adding hair to anything. I think it's really, I don't know, there's just something about it that's so grotesque. I love it.
Art, a tall skin-colored rectangle with narrowed painted eyes at the very top and pale circles with nipples on the bottom corners. Text, My Eyes Are Up Here, 2013, 8 by 3 feet.
So this was in the same show. So also considering the misogyny of a lot of those hair bands. And again, thinking about how painting can kind of manipulate a viewer. So this is called My Eyes Are Up Here. So you actually have to either look at the eyes or the boobs, and they're so far apart that there's nothing to focus on in the middle. So it kind of forces you to keep, moving your head up and down. And I just like that idea, that kind of manipulation.
Art, a painting of a brown dog's face with the eyes in the top corners, nose at the center top, and a huge red tongue down the center, with lower fangs on either side. Text, Dog, 2015.
And then I started doing more paintings. I realized that if you paint, all of your materials are there, and then you have leftover materials and you can keep painting. There was something really immediate and satisfying about that, instead of spending a weekend trying to, find all of the materials you're going to need and then learn how to make the thing you want to make. There's something so immediate about painting, and then I could still get into a really meditative headspace with it. And I enjoy the act of painting. And I still consider myself a sculptor because I feel like I'm just carving up 2D space, but it's very much about space. And then it's very much about the viewer and how the viewer responds to that piece. So when I paint, I feel like it's as sculptural as you can get, even though they're quite flat. And I do, mostly this flat kind of color field shapes. I started doing these animal paintings because I like this idea again of it's kind of taking up your personal space a bit just to look at them. And then the shapes themselves, if you focus on a shape, you kind of lose the representational part of it. And then if you can look at the thing in its entirety, it comes back. So it kind of flickers between, abstraction and representation. And there's something about the symmetry that I also find really intriguing.
Art, a painting in the same style as the dog. This one is a gray cat with black stripes, blue eyes, light pink nose in the center of the painting, a tiny dark pink tongue, and a blue collar with white dots. Text, Cat, 2015.
It's a cat.
Art, another painting in the same style, with two big round eyes near the bottom corners, a gray nose on the center of the bottom edge, three big vertical curved stripes in the center, and arched lines above the eyes. Text, Bat, 2015.
Bat, so they get a little abstract because you have to figure out what to do with all the space in a painting. There's no real empty space. I mean, I guess you could just leave it, but you could leave it white gesso, or you have to figure out a color. Whereas if you're making sculpture, that's just empty space. You don't have to fill it in because space fills it in. So it's a different way of carving up space and using up the space of the rectangle.
Art, a brown nose above two large teeth at the top center. Two black eyes dot both sides on a blue background. The animal's wide tan cheeks go down the sides of the painting, with a brown chin in the center. Text, Untitled, 2017.
This was a squirrel acorn nut thing that I did, and I was looking at it and I just thought that there's something so vulgar about this. It's turning into like these spread legs or something, which I liked.
Art, a brown canvas with a line up the center to a black nose under a gray and white leopard print upside down triangle. Two red eyes with large pupils are on each side. Text, Untitled, 2017.
So then I did this panties, kind of tan line butt with the cheetah print panties, but it's also sort of an owl. So then they started getting more and more abstract.
Art, a painting of two black belts in an X shape with bullets over a skin-colored background with two nipples on each side and curly hair at the top and bottom. Text, Untitled, 2018.
And then when I looked at these together, this is like another kind of owl almost. But I thought to myself, what are you supposed to do with painting? What is painting about? And I thought, well, the thing you're not supposed to do is put just a giant X on a painting. So that's what I did. I put a giant X on a painting, but when there's an X, it's a bullet belt for me because of my metal history. So I started thinking about Judas Priest and all of that, and made this bullet belt guy. So I really like the dumb way this is divided up into 4 sections, but there's this really kind of juicy bullet belt that you also visually get to latch onto, right?
Art, a geometrical painting of dark red jacket with a lighter red, open collar with 2 gray snaps, a gray zipper, and a small section of skin color at the top. Text, red painting, 2018.
Still thinking about this kind of hard cropping in on a chest, kind of thinking about Michael Jackson's leather jackets. I used to have a black biker jacket, but this interested me because those biker jackets are so triangular. So to put all of these triangles on the rectangle and then to try to create all of these different reds was a real kind of challenge for me. So for me, this is just the red painting because each triangle is a different shade of red. And that was a challenge because I never had to think too much about color before.
Art, a painting of a thick, wide black D shape, with tall, thin pink rectangles with thin black lines on each side. Text, black T, 2018.
So it was fun, but I like this one. I think it's successful too. This is just called Black Tea. So again, kind of cropping in on arms and a t-shirt, but it also just being this really blank monochrome with this kind of expressive hair, cartoony hair, flanking those 2 little sides. So it's feels really wrong to me that it's just this for a painting, but that's also what I really love about it.
Art, a painting with a pink background with a black and yellow tank with thin straps over 2 large nipples on the center edges. Text, Untitled, 2019.
And this piece, still thinking about men's chest, thinking, I don't know if you guys are familiar with this, but when you see muscle guys like Muscle Beach, or if you go to a gym and you see the super tough guys, but they have a super skinny tank top that doesn't cover their nipples, it's always so confusing to me. So I'm like, I gotta make that painting. So there's a tie-dye wrestler or muscle guy shirt.
Next, art, a painting on a black canvas. 2 large hairy arms are crossed near the top. They cover the bottom half of the word, Ramones. Text, Untitled, 2019, 24 by 36 inches.
Also, again, just super abstract too. Like, what can I take that I find interesting and just really abstract it, but also still give the viewer something to latch onto, or like something to kind of see that's representational. This is a little bit smaller. All of those other paintings were about 50 by 60. This one's 24 by 36. This was more of a test, kind of trying out the hair again, trying out the black t-shirt again. And when we used to go see shows when I was younger, it was just, you go to a hardcore show and the walls were just lined with dudes with their arms crossed, wearing their black t-shirts, just listening. So like that to me is just this iconic band experience, music experience. Then I kept thinking about, what is painting?
Art, 3 large paintings with flesh-colored penises pointing down from the top edge over a large dotted circle. Each one leaks a different color, white, yellow, and red, onto the bottom of the painting. Text, Triptych, 2019, 36 by 48 inches each.
When I was telling my husband, there's diptychs and triptychs, I'm like, I should just do a painting called Triptychs and make just 3 giant dicks. I was kind of mad too because the Me Too movement was happening and I was just like pissed. So I'm like, I'm gonna do it. So I just did a triptych, but I didn't want to make it vulgar. Like that wasn't my intention. My intention was just to make giant dick paintings that you could just have on your wall that aren't offensive. But every guy that sees this and sees the one that's squirting out blood is horrified by it. But I needed a third thing. So My husband thinks this would look good on like an ice cream truck. I don't know. It's cute.
Art, 2 large square paintings of huge pink feet with 9 toes each along the bottom edge. Each painting has a big toe on the center edge. A small white dog stands in front of the paintings. She is smaller than the toes. Text, Diptych, 2019.
That's Bones, one of my dogs. She's in there for scale, but this is a diptych. So I'm thinking a lot about things that come in pairs and how you can create diptychs out of anything that comes in pairs. So also about just the dumbness of 2 feet that it is a painting. It's just so dumb. It's just taking up so much space, and it's just this fleshy color that, you know, matches my flesh at least. And then the act of like creating this multiple toe thing was kind of meditative a little bit, to just draw those in. Yeah, I just, when I think of something to make that's really dumb, it motivates me.
Art, a painting that is all flesh color, with a line up the center to a penis with short curly hairs around the top, and a shiny, decorated yellow horizontal egg underneath. Text, Fabergé. Eggs, 2019.
Again, another giant dick painting, but there's a quote by Betty White where she says, I don't understand why everyone says, oh, he's got big balls, big balls. She goes, they're so weak. Balls are so weak. She goes, now a vagina, that thing can take a beating. And I was like, oh my God, she's so right. Why do we use that term when it's the weakest part of a human being? So I thought about like what balls were and how fragile they are. And then I just immediately thought of Fabergé eggs. And I was like, there's my next painting, this Fabergé egg ball painting. So I looked up Fabergé eggs. I did my research. This is an actual design on one of them. I used a kind of gold leaf paint. So you can kind of see in the video, there is like this really kind of beautiful sheen to it. But again, it's not the super graphic, gross dick picture. It's kind of like a cute dick with like really beautiful egg balls. I don't know.
Art, a painting that is black on the top 2/3 and skin color on the bottom with nipples on lighter half circles peeking out under the black. The bottom 2/3 of the white AC/DC logo is at the top edge of the black. Text, Crop Top, 2020.
And this painting, again, dealing with this kind of cropped in chest area. I was at a Pink Floyd concert right out of high school, and it was a stadium show, and I was a little stoned, and I looked up, and because people were just coming down this really steep stairway, I saw this couple, and the woman was wearing an AC/DC t-shirt, and she had cut it off, but she had cut it off so short that her boobs were hanging below it. And I was so intimidated and freaked out. I'm like, where am I? And it just burned, that image burned into my brain. So I'm like, oh, I got to make that painting. But there's also something really kind of off-putting about almost dissecting a painting in half and not really getting the complete picture of either side. And then, you know, I do like AC/DC, so if I could put, you know, things that I love into my paintings, all the better. So it kind of does all of those things. And again, it kind of breaks up and exists as something representational at the same time.
Art, a pink canvas with 2 drooping breasts that extend past the canvas's bottom edge. Text, Untitled, 2020.
And then this piece, when I was talking about my teeth finding their way into my work, you know, I'm crazy perimenopausal. My body's changing. I keep making jokes with my friends about how our tits are gonna be laying on the floor soon. So I decided to make this really flappy boob piece where there's a basically just a pink rectangle with these flaps that are hanging below the edge of the painting.
A video of the art, with the breasts flapping in the wind and the little dog running around.
And this is on my Instagram page. This is a little video, so you can see how they just blow if they're outside in the wind. This is on my deck. So they're not held down at all. They're just kind of at the whim of whatever the breeze does. If they're inside, they're not going to move that much, but you get this feeling of just super flat droopiness, which I think is really funny. And this is kind of where I'm going with my painting, is kind of getting my sculptural chops back into it. So I'm doing less pure flat imagery, and I'm starting to add things to the surface, or have things come out. So I'm kind of dealing with painting now as like wall sculptures.
Art, a green canvas with black fur along the edges. A red horizontal line with 6 vertical lines goes across the center. Text, Monster, 2021, acrylic and fur on canvas.
And this is the last slide. So this is just so far called Monster. It's kind of new. I'm doing a series based on Frankenstein, and this was just a trial for an abstract Frankenstein version. And I didn't really like it very much, but it's grown on me a little bit, and I like it more when I put the fur all the way around it, because it makes it kind of sillier and more monstery behind me. And the red and the green are really close in value. So there's a painting that I grew up going to see at the Cleveland Art Museum by Ellsworth Kelly, where it's this red blob with a blue background, and the values, or maybe it's a blue blob with a red background, I can't remember. The values are so close that you look at the painting and it just flickers, like it's almost electric. And I really wanted to get that effect with this. And you can kind of see that it's happening in the slide. It's a little bit more effective in real life, not quite Ellsworth Kelly level, but it's doing that. So, and I like the kind of softness and the goofiness that the fur brings to this really kind of hard geometric design in the middle.
Amy sits in a room in front of the monster art.
So that is it.
Rebecca Trawick.
Thanks, Amy. How cool to see the trajectory of your career and the influences that you continue to explore. I love that. So we'd love to see if attendees have any questions for you. In the meantime, I think Andy can kick us off with a couple. I know we only have a few minutes, so shoot.
A split screen showing all 4 speakers.
Yeah, awesome. I don't really want to presume too much about your particular life, but I think just in general, the things have been kind of weird this past year, obviously, pandemic.
Mm-hmm.
Amy nods.
And you mentioned that you work from home. You probably don't leave too often, other than to go into your backyard, you said.
Yes.
I mean, how is that working with your studio practice right now? Is it good? Is it bad? Is it none of the above?
You know, it's bad.
Amy's section fills the screen. She waves her hand.
But I want to preface that by saying it's bad because I'm not getting a lot of work done, which you'd think like, oh, this is the time to do it. But because I'm at home so much, there's less in my life to put back into my work. So I have less moments where I'm like, that, and it's making connections and I have to make this thing now. And I think that's fine. So I say bad for the work because it's not getting produced, as quickly, but I think it's just a weird time. So I kind of need to ride this out. Maybe there'll be like a crazy spurt of energy after we start to get back to normal, and I'll have a bunch of things I need to make, but I just don't have the fire under my ass right now that I sometimes have. And that's normal for me. It just usually doesn't last a year. It might last a few months of like, can't do anything. And then I make a bunch of stuff and then I stop again. So yeah.
Rebecca.
So I have a question, because this video will be, watched in the future by a lot of students at the college, we hope. Can you talk about longevity? I mean, I think you've had a really varied, long career. I don't know, any advice for young emerging artists, or emerging artists, I should say, who are interested in, like having a life in the arts?
The split screen with all 4 speakers.
Well, this is what I tell all my students. Andy's heard this speech.
Andy smiles. Amy's section fills the screen.
If you're interested in becoming a fine artist, a visual artist, where you don't go get a job working for someone else, or that job is tangential, like teaching is great for visual artists, but they're hard to get those jobs. You need to get your master's degree. Go all the way. You get your bachelor's, then you get your master's, then you can teach. Your instructors are not teachers from college. They are artists from the world, and they will teach you. So even if you don't want to teach, or you are a trust fund kid and you don't need the money, when you go to graduate school, you really can kind of hone in on what you're trying to do. You meet lots of other people that you will be in touch with for the rest of your life, and they become a community that you can depend on. You can have those artists or those curators that you went to school with come over and talk to you about what you're working on. You don't have the luxury of being in school anymore and having just direct input from other people. The longevity thing is super hard, especially for, I went to community college, then I transferred to Kent State, then I got my graduate degree. I don't have a big well of money like a lot of artists do to pull from when they just want to make some art and kick back. Like, I don't have that luxury. And I'm assuming if you're at a community college, you're like me. You, again, need your peer group. Do whatever you can to make your work, even if it's just getting shit off the ground like I was doing. Use your friends. Like when I lost my galleries, my other artist friends and I got together and got a space, put on a few shows. It didn't last forever, but it keeps you motivated and it keeps you active, and you create the art world then. And I think that's where the longevity comes from, because you can't depend on a gallerist to do that for you. It's just too flighty. And try not to get discouraged, because it's a very difficult profession, if you want to even call it a profession. Life practice is probably more accurate. Yeah.
The split screen showing all 4 speakers.
That's great. So a comment from Cindy Ream. Thank you for sharing your work. I love your use of humor and materials. And I appreciate your remarks about longevity. I think, it's interesting that you've had multiple spaces, right? Currently, you still have the yard, which I assume is in your yard.
Front yard. Oh, that's what, Andy, that was like kind of where my focus shifted.
Amy's section fills the screen.
Not that I like going to see shows. It's not my favorite thing to do. My husband's like, you're almost allergic to going to look at art unless it's somebody you want to see. I was like, God, yeah. But we have the space in the front yard, and no one was going to see shows. And I thought, I know so many artists, they're not showing their work. Let's just show it in the yard. People could drive by. Why not? And then it turned into this thing. But as soon as the weather kind of got a little worse, we put a pause on it. And I still haven't opened it up for this summer yet, but we'll probably do at least another summer. So that is one thing, Andy, that kind of shifted, where I put more concentration into showing people's work. And it is a way to kind of keep involved, like you're saying, Rebecca, to kind of keep your foot in. And I'm not a trained curator, but when I had a space when I was younger, it was more about people who I liked, who made good work that was sincere, that didn't have a space to show. And if I had a space, that work was going to get put up and seen, because that's what you need to kind of stay into it, I guess. It's not even about the money. It's about having your work be seen is so fulfilling. That's why we make it,
The split screen showing all 4 speakers.
Well, thank you so much for your generosity and time today, Amy. Please keep poking at good taste.
Everyone nods and smiles.
We all enjoy it a great deal.
I can't help it.
And we're grateful to spend time with you today. And hopefully y'all can join us next time.
Nice.
So thanks so much. Roman will put a couple links in the chat, and we hope to see you next time, and everybody take good care.
Text Chaffey College, Wignall Museum of Contemporary Art, Home Edition. We ask that you complete a quick online survey that will help us as we evaluate our online programming and plan our future programs. https://tinyurl.com/Wignall Spring 21 Visitors Survey.
Thank you.
Amy smiles and waves.
Thanks.
Thanks, Amy.
Text, Chaffey College, Wignall Museum of Contemporary Art, Home Edition.